Introduction: The Rise and Fall of Pablo Escobar. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was one of the most infamous and powerful drug lords in modern history. Rising from a humble background in Colombia, he built an empire that made him one of the wealthiest criminals of all time. His Medellín Cartel controlled a significant portion of the global cocaine trade, turning him into a billionaire and a feared figure both in Colombia and worldwide. At the peak of his power in the 1980s, Escobar's influence extended beyond drug trafficking. He manipulated politics, intimidated law enforcement, and even gained a level of support from the Colombian lower class by funding infrastructure projects, hospitals, and housing developments. However, with great power came great enemies. His brutal tactics, which included assassinations, bombings, and corruption, led to intense scrutiny from Colombian authorities and international law enforcement agencies, particularly the United States. As Escobar's empire grew, so did the efforts to dismantle it. His downfall was marked by increasing government pressure, betrayals within his network, and a relentless manhunt that ended in his death in 1993. The rise and fall of Pablo Escobar is a story of ambition, wealth, power, and ultimately, destruction. His life remains a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked criminal influence, and his legacy continues to shape the drug trade and law enforcement policies today. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria, a name synonymous with the rise of the global cocaine trade and one of the most infamous drug lords in history, was born on December 1, 1949, in the small town of Rio Negro, Colombia. From humble beginnings, Escobar's life journey took him from the dusty streets of rural Colombia to the pinnacle of unimaginable wealth and power, leaving behind a legacy that continues to captivate and horrify the world. Growing up in a modest family, young Pablo was exposed early to the harsh realities of poverty. His father, a farmer, and his mother, a schoolteacher, worked hard, but the family struggled to make ends meet. Pablo, however, had dreams far beyond the life of scarcity he saw around him. Even as a child, Escobar exhibited a sharp mind and an ambition that would later propel him into the dark underbelly of the global drug trade. As a teenager, Pablo began dabbling in petty crime. His first ventures included stealing tombstones, sanding off the inscriptions, and reselling them to smugglers. This early experience in the black market hinted at Escobar's resourcefulness and ruthlessness, traits that would come to define his rise to power. He also engaged in selling fake lottery tickets and smuggling cigarettes, small-time schemes that, while not immensely profitable, set the stage for bigger things. In the 1970s, Escobar's opportunity arrived. The demand for cocaine in the United States was skyrocketing, and Colombia's geography made it an ideal hub for smuggling the drug. Recognizing this, Pablo decided to seize the opportunity with both hands. What began as small-scale operations, transporting cocaine in suitcases and hidden compartments of cars, soon grew into something far more formidable. Escobar's ambition was limitless. By the late 1970s, he had built a vast and sophisticated network of smugglers, pilots, and dealers. To formalize his growing empire, Escobar formed the Medellín Cartel, a ruthless organization that would soon dominate the global cocaine trade. The cartel's success was staggering. At its peak, it supplied an estimated 80% of the cocaine smuggled into the United States. But Escobar's rise to power was about more than just business. It was about control and fear. He eliminated rivals with brutal efficiency, employing a strategy known as plata o plomo, meaning silver or lead, accept a bribe or face death. This policy allowed Escobar to coerce and control vast swaths of Colombian society. Police officers, judges, and even politicians found themselves either on his payroll or facing mortal danger. By the early 1980s, Pablo Escobar had become one of the richest men in the world. According to estimates, he was earning an astonishing $420 million a week. With this wealth, he built extravagant mansions, bought private planes, and even constructed a personal zoo filled with exotic animals from around the globe. Hacienda Nápoles, his luxurious estate, became a symbol of his excess and power. Yet behind the facade of wealth and luxury was a man who would stop at nothing to protect his empire, no matter the cost. As the Colombian government, in cooperation with the United States, began to crack down on the cocaine trade, Escobar responded with a campaign of terror. Bombings, assassinations, and kidnappings became routine, plunging Colombia into a period of unprecedented violence. Despite his ruthless tactics, Escobar also cultivated a Robin Hood image among Colombia's poor. He funded housing projects, built schools, and created soccer fields, winning the loyalty of many in Medellin's slums. For some, he was a folk hero, a man who took on the establishment and shared his wealth with the downtrodden. This duality, violent drug lord and benefactor of the poor, added to the complexity of his legacy. As international pressure mounted, the Colombian government intensified its efforts to capture Escobar. In 1991, facing imminent extradition to the United States, he negotiated a controversial deal with the Colombian authorities. He would surrender and serve a prison sentence in Colombia, but on his own terms. The result was La Catedral, a luxury prison that Escobar essentially designed for himself, complete with a nightclub, a soccer field, and comfortable living quarters. However, Escobar's incarceration was a farce. He continued to run his drug empire from within the prison, prompting the government to move him to a more secure facility. Rather than accept this, Escobar escaped in 1992, sparking a massive manhunt that would last for more than a year. On December 2, 1993, one day after his 44th birthday, Pablo Escobar's life came to a violent end. Colombian National Police, with assistance from U.S. intelligence agencies, tracked him down to a hideout in Medellín. In the ensuing shootout, Escobar was killed. Whether he died from police gunfire or took his own life remains a subject of debate. Escobar's death marked the end of an era, but his legacy endures. The Medellín Cartel may have collapsed, but the global cocaine trade persists, as do the social and political scars left by his reign of terror. In Colombia, Escobar's story is both a cautionary tale and a testament to the destructive power of greed and violence. In popular culture, Pablo Escobar remains a figure of fascination, immortalized in books, films, and television series. His life, with its dizzying highs and devastating lows, serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of the drug trade and the complex interplay of power, corruption, and ambition. Even decades after his death, the name Pablo Escobar evokes awe and fear, symbolizing both the seductive allure of unimaginable wealth and the brutal reality of its price. Pablo Escobar, one of history's most infamous and enigmatic figures, was a man who left an indelible mark on Colombia and the world. Rising from humble beginnings to control the Medellín Cartel, Escobar built a drug empire that at its peak supplied an estimated 80% of the cocaine smuggled into the United States. His story is a chilling yet fascinating blend of power, violence, and paradoxical generosity, casting a long shadow over Colombia's modern history. Escobar's ascent to power began in the 1970s, during a time when cocaine demand was skyrocketing in the United States. Recognizing the opportunity, Escobar and his partners built an elaborate smuggling network that spanned continents. By the early 1980s, Escobar was making billions of dollars annually, and Forbes magazine listed him as one of the world's richest men. His immense wealth allowed him to live like a king, with extravagant estates, private zoos, and a seemingly endless supply of luxury cars and airplanes. But beneath this veneer of success lay a brutal and ruthless criminal operation. Escobar's strategy for maintaining control was simple yet terrifying. Plata o plomo, silver or lead. People had a choice: accept his bribes or face assassination. Judges, police officers, politicians, and journalists who stood in his way often paid with their lives. The Medellín Cartel's reign of terror included thousands of killings, car bombings, and even attacks on civilian targets designed to spread fear and coerce compliance. One of the most notorious acts of violence linked to Escobar was the bombing of Avianca Flight 203 in 1989. Aiming to assassinate a presidential candidate who opposed the cartel, Escobar orchestrated the mid-air explosion, killing all 110 people on board. The message was clear: no one was beyond his reach. This ruthless approach escalated Colombia's drug war to unprecedented levels of violence and chaos. Paradoxically, while Escobar was a ruthless killer, he cultivated an image of a Robin Hood-like figure, especially among the poor of Medellín. He built housing projects, sports facilities, schools, and churches, creating a loyal support base that, for a time, shielded him from capture. To many in his home city, Escobar was a benefactor who stood up to a corrupt and indifferent government. This duality made him both feared and admired, complicating the Colombian government's efforts to bring him to justice. The Colombian government, with strong backing from the United States, eventually declared all-out war on Escobar and the Medellín Cartel. This period saw intense battles, both literal and political, with special Colombian police units and American drug enforcement agencies working together to dismantle the cartel. In 1991, under mounting pressure, Escobar struck a controversial deal with the Colombian government, agreeing to surrender in exchange for a reduced sentence and the luxury of building his own prison, known as La Catedral. Predictably, this prison was more of a palace, allowing Escobar to continue running his empire from behind its walls. However, Escobar's hubris eventually led to his downfall. After escaping La Catedral in 1992, he became the target of a relentless manhunt. The formation of the vigilante group Los Pepes, composed of rival drug traffickers and former cartel associates, added to the ferocity of the chase. In December 1993, Escobar was finally tracked down and killed on the rooftops of Medellín, marking the end of an era of unprecedented violence and cartel dominance. The legacy of Pablo Escobar is a complex one. For some, he remains a symbol of resistance against government corruption and social inequality. For others, he epitomizes the destruction and despair wrought by the global drug trade. The scars left by his reign are still evident in Colombia, where efforts to rebuild and move forward are ongoing. In reflecting on Escobar's life and impact, it becomes clear that his story is not just one of crime and punishment, but also of the deep social divides and economic inequalities that fueled the rise of the cartels. Understanding this history is essential for addressing the root causes of the drug trade and preventing the emergence of future Escobars. The allure of Escobar's story, told through countless books, documentaries, and television series, serves as both a cautionary tale and a reminder of the complex interplay between power, violence, and society. Even in death, Escobar's name continues to evoke fascination and fear, a testament to the lasting impact of one of history's most powerful drug lords. By the early 1990s, the tide was turning decisively against Pablo Escobar, the infamous Colombian drug lord whose Medellín Cartel had for years dominated the global cocaine trade and brought unparalleled violence and corruption to Colombia. Escobar's rise to power had been meteoric, fueled by both ruthless ambition and a complex relationship with the people of Medellín, who often viewed him as a Robin Hood-like figure due to his charitable projects and populist rhetoric. But the combined forces of the Colombian government, the United States Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, and rival cartels had reached a breaking point, determined to bring Escobar's reign to an end. By 1991, facing mounting pressure and fearing extradition to the United States, Escobar struck a controversial deal with the Colombian government. In exchange for surrendering, he secured a reduced sentence and the extraordinary right to build his own prison. This facility, known as La Catedral, was far from a typical penitentiary. It was a luxurious compound, complete with a nightclub, spa, waterfall, and even a soccer field, allowing Escobar to continue running his vast criminal enterprise from within its walls. His surrender was, in effect, a tactical maneuver, allowing him to buy time, protect his family, and maintain control over the Medellín Cartel. However, Escobar's brazenness could not go unchecked forever. As reports of La Catedral's opulence and ongoing criminal operations reached the public, the Colombian government faced intense domestic and international pressure to take action. In July 1992, when officials attempted to transfer Escobar to a more secure facility, he escaped, launching one of the most intense manhunts in history. For more than a year, Escobar evaded capture, using an extensive network of safe houses, informants, and loyalists to stay one step ahead of his pursuers. The manhunt for Escobar was led by the Search Block, a specialized unit of the Colombian National Police created explicitly to bring him to justice. Operating with intelligence and logistical support from the DEA and the CIA, the Search Block employed a combination of surveillance, informants, and military tactics to gradually close in on Escobar's whereabouts. At the same time, the vigilante group Los Pepes, an acronym for Perseguidos por Pablo Escobar, or People Persecuted by Pablo Escobar, composed of rival cartel members and former associates, conducted a parallel campaign of violence, assassinating Escobar's allies and dismantling his network piece by piece. As the circle tightened around Escobar, his isolation grew. Many of his closest allies had either been killed, arrested, or had turned against him. By late 1993, the once mighty kingpin was a fugitive on the run, living in constant fear and forced to move between hideouts. On December 2, 1993, after tracing a phone call made by Escobar to his son, Colombian forces finally located him in a modest middle-class neighborhood in Medellín. What followed was a dramatic and deadly confrontation. Escobar attempted to escape across the rooftops, engaging in a final shootout with members of the Search Block. In the end, he was shot and killed, with a bullet wound to the head that some speculate may have been self-inflicted to avoid capture. His death marked the symbolic end of an era, but the deeper structural challenges facing Colombia, the entrenched drug trade, systemic corruption, and social inequality, did not disappear with him. The dismantling of the Medellín Cartel created a power vacuum, quickly filled by the rival Cali Cartel, and later by a fragmented landscape of smaller, more decentralized criminal organizations. Though Colombia eventually made significant strides in reducing cartel violence and restoring civil society, the legacy of Escobar's reign continues to reverberate, shaping both the nation's history and its cultural memory. Beyond Colombia, Escobar's story has taken on a mythic quality, inspiring countless books, films, and television series that explore the dark allure of his criminal empire. Yet, for those who lived through the violence of the 1980s and early 1990s, Escobar remains a stark reminder of the devastating human cost of the global drug trade. His life and death serve as both a cautionary tale and a lens through which to understand the complex interplay of crime, politics, and society in Latin America and beyond. Over the ensuing decades, Colombia has worked to rebuild, promoting economic development, tourism, and social programs aimed at addressing the root causes of narco-violence. The story of Pablo Escobar, however, remains etched into the nation's consciousness, a story of ambition, brutality, and the ultimate price of unchecked power. Pablo Escobar's life was a story of extremes, of unimaginable wealth and unspeakable violence. He was a man who rose from nothing to become one of the most powerful criminals in history, only to lose it all in the end. His legacy is a reminder of the cost of greed and the devastating impact of the drug trade. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories from the shadows of history. Until next time, stay curious.